So I'm going to move quickly into our next session, which focuses on data science. So again, we have two presentations in this session. Our two faculty leads are Professor Kwan-Lu Ma, who's going to talk about visualization of big data in their RISE theme, and Professor Carl Levitt, whose theme are focusing on cybersecurity of critical infrastructure. So,
hi, I'm Kwan-Lu Ma. So our project is Center for Visualization. And through this RISE project, we get to help campus researchers develop visualization solution and the data analysis solution for their research. And so today I'd like to introduce my PhD student, Chris Bryan. And Chris came to UC Davis about 2.5 years ago, and his research is in information visualization and visual analytics. And he has been involved in our RISE project over the past year. And so today he's going to talk about his work. Chris?
Thanks, Dr. Ma. Real quick, Christine, I think I lost my videos. Can I log onto a Chrome browser and play it?
They should play.
They should, oh, great, okay. Okay, we'll cross that bridge if it breaks. Okay, so, like Dr. Ma said, my name is Chris Bryan, and first I want to talk a little bit about the Center for Excellence in Visualization. The principal investigators are the second list there. I'm not going to go over name by name, but Dr. Ma is he's my professor. And our objectives, just kind of three general ways to succinctly classify them. The first one is we really want to foster interdisciplinary research or education. And so my particular RISE project, we really do that. There's a lot of interdisciplinary intersection there. The second thing is we wish to provide state-of-the-art visualization and technology gateways. So if you have a need, hardware-based or software algorithmic, we can try to provide that. The third thing is we really want to promote academic and industry outreach. And I want to add on to that non-profit outreach or museum outreach. Dr. Lewin, he mentioned the Exploratorium, so all three projects that I'm going to talk about today actually have a deal with the Exploratorium. So there's kind of a theme there. They are going to play, I think. Please play. Oh, awesome, okay. So Dr. Ma actually showed this view last year, this particular project. It's called Living Liquid, and what it does is it visualizes plankton levels within the ocean. So this is currently an exhibit at the Exploratorium, so you can take your kids there and they can go do stuff while you play with this. So they give you these circular discs that are clear on top, and as you move them around the table, it actually shows the very fine-grained view of the plankton levels at that point in the world. It's pretty neat. This one will play. Okay, that one might have hit the dust. So the second one is a Pacific predator tracking visualization. And this is also at the Exploratorium. I think this is still in its demo stages. So, okay, so it's still ongoing. But what you basically do is you take the task of an oceanographer, of someone who wants to tag predators. So this bottom right view is probably the best view you're going to get of it. As you have a little ship, looks like a Lego block, that you move around the tabletop. And as you encounter predators, which are moving around, so it's a predator tracking database that it simulates. As you encounter predators, they show up on your radar and they get tagged. And then as they swim away, you can actually see their tracks over the ocean. So that's a really good one to do to look at if you want to see like how many sharks are out in the bay right now. So my particular RISE project has to do with genomic evolution. So, and this is also Dr. Lewin's project too. So he's done a lot of the background research, which is this slide here. So just to kind of introduce the topic, humans have a genome, right, in our cells, and it's made up of chromosomes, which are made up of genes, which are made up of the actual DNA base pairs. So an interesting feature is something called a synteny block, which is a preserved DNA fragment, chunk, segment between different species. So all eukaryotes, mammals, humans, cats, dogs, we all have segments of DNA that are the same. They've been preserved over time. They're just rearranged in different combinations. They've been split, transposed, flipped, different orientations. So scientists like Dr. Lewin have developed algorithms where you can take two current species, like a chimpanzee and an orangutan, and you can derive their common ancestor's genome. This is really cool stuff. So where I come in, and where Dr. Ma and this particular project come in, is the visualization of this. So we kind of formulate it as a puzzle analogy. If you take the puzzle pieces, those are the synteny blocks themselves, the fragments of DNA. Each particular species then is a puzzle. And the objective is to see how the puzzle evolves and changes over time. Because the pieces stay the same, they just rearrange themselves. And so this right here would represent 3 different species that on the left-hand side would be the most ancient ancestor, which evolves into the second one, which evolves into a mouse. And I know that's a picture of a mole on the left and a lemur in the middle. So I'm not suggesting that a lemur actually evolves into a mouse. We don't know what ancestral species look like mostly, so we just kind of guessed based on the phylogenetic tree that, you know, the lemur is an animal in the same class as a mouse. So now I just want to walk you through kind of a demo of the app that we've built. You start out with a phylogenetic tree. So we have it's a subset, it's not the whole tree. And we have about 20 or 25 species that you can actually map their genome in. So we let you scroll around, just play around the tree, and you might see 2 species that you want to look at. So maybe like a human and a chimpanzee, or that's not actually what I picked. Eventually I picked something. Okay, I pick a human and an orangutan. So we want to see their common ancestor's genome and look at how it evolves into a human and an orangutan. So we load up this detailed genomic view, and we can interact with the chromosomes and actually see how they evolve over time. So that is how the simian ancestor's genome evolves into a human set of chromosomes. Then we can do the same thing for the orangutan. And if you notice, the arrangements are different, but it's still the same chromosomal data. It's really cool. So after this, you may want to look at different species, because we have a bunch loaded. So the idea is for it to be an explorative and just playful interface. So you might load an ancestral species called a UR congolitis, which is really hard to say in the morning. And you might look at how its genome evolves over time. So in its first step to the simian ancestor, there's not a whole lot of rearrangement. There's a little bit more as you go to the orangutan, which is a current species. So another option we let you do is actually interact with the individual chromosomes. Maybe you want to see where chromosome 1 goes. You can see it splits. Part of it goes to chromosome 3, and part of it goes to chromosome 21. And that big chunk also does a flip, which is very important for some reason that I don't know why, but Dr. Lewin really liked seeing them. He liked seeing the flip. So finally, we're going to look at a macaque and a dog. And so the thing that I want you to notice on this is look at the top right, the monkey, and then compare its chromosome to the dog. Now the dog is much more complicated. So we only have one ancestor from the dog to the most common ancestor, the Boreoeutherian ancestor. And we have 2 intermediate species for the monkey. But just look at how different those chromosomes are. And so I just want you to see like how much the chromosome basically explodes when we interact with this one. Boom. Yes, so we don't have any intermediate species, so we can just do the one step. That's what we know so far. Okay, so my place in this project and the RISE program in general for visualization, this particular project, it's still ongoing. It's very collaborative. I really like that, just the interdisciplinarity in it. And actually, if you look at our full list of contributors, the names got lost, but there's 7 different organizations that contribute to this project and about 20 contributors. So for myself and Greg is the undergraduate with the white cowboy hat on. It's been a really good experience for us. We got to interact with people from all over the world, England, Kansas, another thing is, it's just a really cool project. It's got a lot of potential as a research project. We've had talks with the Exploratorium leadership, and just lots of ideas, maybe using as an educational tool in an introductory anthropology or genomics course. The other thing that's been kind of neat is Dr. Lewin has demoed it at a couple of big genomic events, such as the G10K conference. And it's always good to hear that really smart PhD guys, when they see their research kind of come to life, and they make sounds like ooh and ah. So I really like that part too. That makes me feel good. And that's about all I got for today. So thank you guys. If you have any comments, feel free to give them to me afterwards. Compliments only, please. And anything bad, feel free to tell Dr. Ma. Thank you.
Well, for sure, I want to thank the Chancellor for her support in providing the funds for this, but I also want to thank Harris and Paul Dodd's staff for providing us so much encouragement and helping us make connections with other RISE efforts and other units on campus. And I don't think what would have happened without the RISE project. So Tammy and her staff, I think, have been very helpful to us. So, computer security, it's much more than a technology problem. We're certainly aware it's a technology problem. It's also an economics problem. There's the economic side of the attackers, the economic side of us users and the defenders, what's going to give them the incentive to help protect us. And and that's one way that RISE effort becomes something very multidisciplinary. And also, there's so many applications of computer security now, so many areas where security can impact our lives, such as medical delivery, health delivery, transportation, and we've been able to work with, through Paul and Stan, we've been able to work with other RISE units on campus to try to show how security can work. So I'd like to introduce Andy Applebaum, who's a 5th-year graduate student in computer science, and he's been in the RISE project since the start. Andy?
Hi, everybody. My name is Andy. As Carl said, I'm going to be talking about cybersecurity for critical infrastructures. Just as a quick little introduction, we've all heard about cybersecurity, and when we talk about it, we tend to think about industry and data. And if you've read the news, I'm sure you've heard about Target and recently about Sony. Fortunately and a little unfortunately, we don't hear about attacks against our infrastructure, which are very different than attacks against private industries. Our infrastructure, as opposed to the industry, is actually a public good. We need that. From a RISE perspective, the interesting part of the infrastructure is that we're no longer dealing with strictly cyber systems, strictly digital systems, but systems that are also physical. And combating cyber threats in this domain is necessarily interdisciplinary. So a little overview of what I'm going to be going over. Some logistics, just some people. one of the infrastructures that we've been really looking at a lot is power distribution from an economic perspective as well as for energy management systems. Another infrastructure is automated traffic systems, and there's water infrastructure, and a new potential infrastructure of embedded medical devices. And finally, I'm going to close everything out with the idea of cybersecurity as a public good. So we have a lot of people. There are 8 co-PIs on this project. Altogether with everybody, we've got, I believe, 7 different departments. Sponsorship-wise, we have a lot of different sponsors. You have the National Science Foundations. On the bottom, you can see from the government, DARPA, who were the originators of the internet. You also have every 3-letter agency. For energy, on the industry side, we have the retailer PG&E, we also have Schweitzer, and looking more towards other infrastructures like automated highways, we have Ford. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the first infrastructure, which is the power grid. Typically with power, we just turn light switches on and everything works. However, physically what needs to happen is when we turn that light switch on, power needs to be delivered immediately. So this requires a lot of work on the part of the retailer PG&E in the actual delivery of that power. And what goes on behind the scenes is an independent system operator coordinates between retailers like PG&E and power generators to negotiate how much power they're going to be buying and selling with each other. And all of this is done automatically where bids are given by the retailers and the generators. It works pretty well, it gets the job done, the lights work. However, there are potential problems. Some of you may remember Enron. They were able to reverse engineer the automatic software that was running behind Cal ISO and create some sort of fraudulent bids that produced them a lot of money, which is good for them, I suppose, but as a consequence, normal people like us had to deal with rolling blackouts in California. So one of the goals for this project is to detect fraudulent transactions within this economic marketplace for the power grid. Another interesting idea is integration of renewables. And so since power has to be delivered immediately, the retailers and the generators need to know how much they're going to have and how much they're going to need. And that involves predicting how much you're going to have for the generators. Looking at wind, we can see that there's a wide degree of variability. And what happens is that when you're dealing with wind and solar, it can be difficult to predict exactly how much you're going to need and how much supply you're going to have when you need it. Looking forward, what we can see is in 2013, we have a fairly steady load distribution for an average day, but extrapolating into the future, we can see that there is a dip in the afternoon, and then around when the sun goes down, there's a huge spike in the amount of energy that we need. And one of the potential causes of this is the integration of solar. When the sun is up, individual consumers no longer need to buy power from the grid, and instead they're producing their own. As more consumers start doing this, the jump is going to get bigger and bigger, and this is going to increase the tax on the grid itself. So having said a little bit about the power grid, some of the ideas we're going forward is to use misuse detection for the smart grid. We want to shy away from traditional cybersecurity where we're just detecting intrusions and focus more on how protocols can be broken. From a market perspective, we want to look at economic incentives as well as the integration of renewables. For smart applications such as electric vehicles, we want to look at appliance coordination and how it can affect that load distribution we saw on the previous slide. And two of the last smaller ideas are privacy concerns, whether or not any of this leaks important information, as well as potential issues with physical distribution, such as forcing blackouts or directing too much power or too little power to a specific location. Towards the direction of results, we've been looking at mainly electric vehicles. From that slide a couple ago with the load distribution, EVs present an interesting problem in the fact that when everybody comes home, they all want to charge their car. And when all these people want to charge their car, the load jumps even more. With legislation from California, we're going to have even more EVs, which is going to make that jump even bigger. And so some of our results were, we were able to identify ways in which we can optimize some of these energy transmissions for the EVs by coordinating their schedules to make that distribution more stable and wasting less electricity. From a cyber perspective, we've also considered the idea of anonymity in this protocol. For example, do we have electric vehicles leaking their location as well as their owner schedules? And we've also considered how electric vehicles, this framework, can be used to overload the grid. Switching infrastructures, I'm going to focus now on automated highways. So the basic idea is that we want to have some sort of cooperative traffic framework where cars can work together, such as optimizing for fuel efficiency by driving them together. You also want to have automatic obstacle avoidance and potential ways to optimize intersections, and all of this requires communication and protocols between the cars. Having said all this, one of the problems that this introduces is that there's multiple layers for security vulnerabilities. For example, is there a way that a malicious car can cause a roadblock? Can they lie about their position? Can they trick people into congestion? What we want to do from a protocol perspective is find misbehaving actors and identify them for all the other participants so that they can actually have their optimized interactions. Water distribution is another thing we're looking at. It's interesting because it's a mix of the physical systems as well as the cyber or digital ones. We can talk about wastewater, drinking water, lots of different kinds of water. And from an attacker's point of view, they might want to manipulate a sensor to lie about availability. They might want to control flow to overload a target or disrupt a target, for example, a public pool. There are also privacy concerns, maybe identifying whether or not anyone is home at a current time. And we can have we can have disruptions that integrate with other infrastructures, such as the smart grid. You don't want to lose power and water, and that can be quite uncomfortable. For medical devices, we're working on a framework for medical device plug and play, where medical devices can communicate and interact with each other to create a more whole picture for an individual who is in need of life-saving services. This involves people in the medical school, and our biggest goal is to come up with an open standard for device interoperability. This includes automated analysis of safety and liveness guarantees to ensure the security of the system. And the last infrastructure we're going for is considering cybersecurity as public health. Traditionally with medicine, we have medicine focusing on one person, but public health focusing on a whole bunch of people. That doesn't really exist for cybersecurity. We usually only focus on individual computers. And this push is towards coming up with an infrastructure that can talk about the entire cyber health of, say, the country. This is interesting because what it can do is it can reduce the risk posed by having additional attackers, such as botnets. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, integrating off of this, is the idea of using argumentation logic for cyber systems. And the basic idea is to use a framework that better explains cyber reasoning to make security more accessible to the general population. So to just do a little summary, this is a multidisciplinary project. We have a lot of different people. Some of our initial results are on the economic side, focusing on the market, as well as EV models that allow for optimization and renewable integration. We've also had a lot of work done on the argumentation perspective. In the future, we're going to be looking at cross-infrastructure attacks as well as other potential infrastructures. We like to develop and analyze current and new protocols. And finally, get some pending proposals going. We have some from the NSF as well as the US Army Research Lab. Thank you.